Hello everyone! Today we're going to be doing something a little different. Today I'm going to tell you my story, and the reasons why I'm so passionate about Star Wars: The Old Republic. So I actually grew up between the United States and Canada. My parents were in the Canadian military and it caused us to move around a lot. But one of the things that was really staple in my life was access to the computer. My dad would often joke that I knew how to open the CD tray before I even had learned how to walk. Growing up, my dad was actually also really into computers, the hardware aspect of fixing and upgrading them, as well as the software aspect of being able to share and trade games. Near our computer we had stacks and rows of all kinds of different computer games, from Doom and Quake to StarCraft, and a whole bunch of older Star Wars solo games. So funnily enough, my first exposure to Star Wars wasn't any of the Star Wars movies, it was actually the Star Wars computer games. So for those of you who are older, those would be the Dark Forces games and the Jedi Knight games were the ones that I was really into when I was younger. Those of you who haven't had a chance to play them, they actually featured a unique character that is not in the movies named Kyle Katarn. As the internet started becoming more and more available at home, I disobeyed my parents' orders to not use the internet and promptly stuck onto it and started figuring out what exactly you could access. One of my younger friends had shown me something really cool at her house that was called Neopets, where you could take care of your own virtual pet and it had lots of little mini games online. One of the aspects that I really liked about this online game was that I found out I could actually talk to other people all around the world. While this eventually wound up being a 1-month grounding once my parents found out I was talking to strangers on the internet, it did also lead to my real love of creating things for other people and being able to work on things with other people. There were different events that would go on for limited time and there was no guide to go with them, and I really liked creating these in-depth guides. When I was just like a kid, I was like probably 10 or 11, and you could host them on your little mini website on the site, and I really liked making these things for other people, showing it to them, and then other people giving me feedback about them. I thought it was so cool that you could interact with real live other people. Somewhere along the line, my parents happened to get me a gift card to a game store. I was so excited! I could go buy a new Star Wars game! Woohoo! So we went in, we got Lego Star Wars, and I thought that would be super cool. We got it home and found out we couldn't install it in our computer. The guys at the store were super nice and let us return it, so I just grabbed the other Star Wars game I could find in the store, the only other one, and that was Knights of the Old Republic. So Knights of the Old Republic is the precursor game to Star Wars: The Old Republic. It's a solo game, so you don't play with friends, just by yourself, but it has an incredibly in-depth storyline, really great characters, and the combat's quite fun too, if older than the current styles of combat. And oh wow, did I love this game! Oh, I absolutely still love it too. I was playing the sequel not too long ago, a couple months ago, and I found out somewhere a few years later that they were working on a Knights of the Old Republic online, some type of Star Wars game that you could play online with other people. I had accidentally just caught the tail end of Star Wars Galaxy shutting down, so I actually logged in probably like a few months before they shut it down. It felt too complicated for me at the time, and I didn't really understand what was going on, so I just deleted it. Something I really regret now in retrospect. So once I found out the actual website for the game had been released, I was super excited. This would have been probably in like 2008, 3 years before the game would ever even be released, and I made an account and I was like following every little bit of news about it. I was so excited for it to come out. Eventually the game launched. I even had a guild to play with at launch, a bunch of people that I'd met over time. That was really cool, and it was such a blast to be able to play, especially the beta before the game even came out. It felt so magical to be able to go kind of live out my Star Wars fantasies online. So not only could I really enjoy being the trooper in this world of magic, sorcery, and wizardry, the wizard, does anyone remember that? The Jedi Consular used to be called the Jedi Wizard, but I really liked being able to do it with other people. The game is super great for solo play, obviously, with all the class stories, but you can also share that crazy moment in your class story with a friend or go exploring with datacrons with them. One of my really strong memories from when the game first came out was going out with 3 other friends and trying to go get a really difficult datacron in Terrace, and we're just cracking up in voice and text chat, just trying to get this silly datacron and falling off over and over. Eventually I wound up in the guild that I'm in now that I really like, Remnants of Hope. Before that though, I was in a guild. Pretty funny story. The guild leaders had been creating this guild probably for 2 or more years before the game was launched, and the second the game launched they rushed to level 50 because they wanted to be one of the first people in the world to get there. But once they got there, there wasn't a ton to do at Endgame when the game was first released, and they just kind of stopped playing it. It took them like a whole month to be done with Star Wars The Old Republic, and we were pretty sad because a lot of the rest of the members, I think I was only like, it took me like months and months to get to level 50 because I was just happily taking my time doing every quest and exploring and playing with friends and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of us who still wanted to keep playing, so we actually merged into another guild, and that's Remnants of Hope. So I didn't even have to do anything. I was just suddenly a part of this second group that I didn't know much about. One of the first events that I attended where I started to get to meet other people in my guild was a roleplay event. For those of you who haven't had a chance to roleplay yet, it's basically exercise in creative writing where you create a story based on your own personal character and the environments that you're in. So in our case, it would be a story set in the Star Wars The Old Republic era, and maybe it could be on the specific planet you're on, like Coruscant or Dromikas, and then you act as the character that you're currently playing. So I'd usually be role-playing as my trooper, but she's not exactly like the trooper in game. She has her own personality, she has her own different backstory, she's not a member of Havoc Squad, so on and so forth. And when I got there, they hadn't really done any organization. They'd like set a date and a time, let's roleplay this day, and a whole bunch of people showed up. It was like at least 12 people, which was pretty awesome to see that many real people showing up to an in-game online event, and you could see all their different characters and stuff, but there wasn't really a story, so everyone was just kind of randomly chatting. Like, it's difficult to have roleplay when you don't really have a reason to be there. You don't have a story setting or a plot to get things started. So I was like, oh, let's make something, and I made up this just really small story about like, oh, here's a device, it's got a code on it, let's go figure out what it says. And so one of the guild leaders at the time said, you seem to really enjoy this, do you want to become our roleplay officer? And I was like, sure, let's make a story and follow it over the course once a week. And through roleplay, it was really cool. I got to meet quite a few people and get to know them really well. I didn't realize this would be a byproduct of leading these roleplay events, is not only would I talk and chat and enjoy time with these people during the actual event, but in between we'd come brainstorm story ideas, or like write down dialogue, or create NPC characters for the other players to interact with, stuff like that. And you get to know people really well when you're spending time working on projects with them. Around that same time, I also started doing my first operations. Oh, first operation for anyone is amazing. It's like blows your mind how much is going on, how much teamwork there is, how much fun it can be if you're in a great group. Wow, really, really great memories from doing operations with my guild, not only back then, but all the way up until now. And if you ever do progression rating, and progression rating is doing more difficult operations over a longer period of time with a mostly set group. So you'd meet up every once a week or whatever, just like you'd meet up once a week to practice soccer for soccer games, or to practice chess, whatever else you want to play. And this was another way that I really got to meet other players online and get to know them very, very well. I have met so many incredible people this way. To give kind of an idea about how close people can get via raiding, one of our raid members felt that he'd become close enough friends with all of us in the raid group that he invited all of us to celebrate his vow renewal with his wife. He said he felt we were very close friends, even closer than some of the friends that he met in real life. So that was such a wonderful moment to experience. And since then, we've actually done a ton of other guild events. I went to one just a few months ago in Washington. It was fantastic to not only catch up and meet the people that you've met online in person. They're like real people and you can give them a hug, and it's fantastic. And I also got to meet a bunch of other members from my guild that I hadn't had a chance to interact with at all, but meeting them in person was an absolute pleasure and makes me feel like it'd be really fun if I ever jump into another game that I've never played before with them. So one of the members of our regular raid group was a Smuggler Heels, and he was very competent, very quiet though. For whatever reason, we were the chatty Cathy raid group, and many people were like me, they just didn't shut up. We would just talk non-stop, make jokes, whatever. And this Smuggler Heels would barely ever say anything. He'd only really reply if someone asked him a direct question. He was just shy. There was nothing more interesting than that. And for whatever reason, because he was so different than everyone else, I had like this itty bitty crush on him. It's a really dumb reason to have a crush on someone, but there you go. I had a crush on someone because they were quiet. So right around that time where I just started volunteering to lead these roleplay events, this Smuggler Heels actually volunteered to help me out with it, and I was totally down for some help. I had no idea what I was doing, and I had to create some type type of plot device every week to get us going, so I was super happy to have him volunteer. So we'd spend like a couple nights a week maybe just chatting online. We didn't really do voice chat, and we'd be typing up ideas and plot points and creating things, exploring the different planets, seeing cool locations that we could roleplay at that people maybe don't see often or don't go to often. And apart from that, the more time we spent planning together, the more time we just kind of spent not planning, just hanging out or playing our characters. Eventually we had a matched pair of characters, two Imperial agents. I had a female one, he had a male one, and we'd go do the stories together. I'd go do all the evil stuff and he'd go do the mostly good stuff. So quite a few months passed and we're spending more and more time with each other, and I'm obviously really enjoying it. He is too. We don't even know what each other look like or where exactly we live, stuff like that. Just we're really good online friends that I've originally had a crush on. Shh, don't tell him. And somewhere along the way, our highest skill leadership position, basically the leader of the entire guild position, came up, and I was like, oh, you know what? I feel like I could really do that job really well. I like talking and listening and working with other people. I'm not crazy. I won't steal everything from the guild bank, stuff like that. I feel like I could do some good, especially now that I've got my hands a little more on this officer position where I'm taking care of the roleplay events. Maybe I could do really good there. And I think there was an election and I won. I was clearly really excited to do this, but then I realized it'd be really weird if I continued this relationship with this person I'd gotten really close with, because I felt like it'd be like favoritism, and it also was getting kind of weird because I was starting to like him more and more, and it was an online thing. I didn't want to online date someone that was too weird, and so I just stopped talking to him, and that was really sad for both of us. But I was just like, what else can you do? And a bit later he expressed how sad he was about this, and he didn't understand why I'd stopped talking to him, and because I didn't say anything to him. I should have. I was clearly a bit naive and young, and he really expressed that made him sad, which I'm really glad he did, because I don't think it would have gone anywhere if he hadn't taken the risk to actually come and say something to me. And the crazy part is we're having this whole deep emotional conversation over text. That's weird. But hey, however you want to meet and talk with someone, whatever medium it is, if your heart's in it, I don't think it matters too much. So at that point, we're like sitting around in some hangar in like Coruscant or something, and then probably the developers have some weird text log of these two weirdos expressing how much they like each other somewhere on file. But yeah, I basically ended up saying the same thing, that I really liked him back, and I told him the reason that I was backing away, and we both decided to see where it would go. I think we both were not super keen on online dating, but we both really liked each other, and that was kind of the only option we had. So we've got this weird kind of online dating thing going on, and we spent probably at least a year doing that. It grew from just hanging out on a frequent basis to hanging out online on like a constant basis. Anytime both of us could get online, we'd be hanging out together. I've always been a bit of a nerd and working on all kinds of different projects, so he would often just come hang out with me, whatever I was doing at the time, and we'd be talking over voice chat, and I'd be like, I need to go into achievement, and he'd be like, sure, I'll come with you, let's go. About a year down the road, after we're kind of doing this weird internet dating thing, he actually came to visit me in person, and one of the reasons this was more difficult is because I was in Canada and he was in California. I don't know if you know those two locations, but they're not really close to each other. The best part is that at the time he was in school, so he was still living with his parents, and he didn't tell them until like a day before he was leaving that he was going to go stay with some stranger in Canada that he was in love with. In retrospect, if I was a parent, I'd be pretty mad too. It was really weird at first to meet him in person, and I felt like we didn't click at first as well as we did online, because meeting someone in person and hanging out with them in person is really different, especially online, especially if you're not doing video chat. We usually would just do voice chat. There's an entire different physical component that you're missing, and it just felt weird, I guess, to hang out. Luckily, a lot of that wore off by the end of the week that he was visiting, and in the end, it turns out that, yeah, we still like each other, and let's continue long-distance dating now, I guess, and not just internet dating. I think another year or so goes by, and we've actually, no, probably 2 years, we've gone back and forth multiple times to visit each other. I met his family, he's met mine. We've gone to guild events together, met up with other guildmates together, and at some point I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. It felt like it was breaking my heart to constantly be away from him, and even though we were meeting up daily online, it just didn't feel the same, and it wasn't going to work for me. So this was also during a fairly bad part of my life where I'd also just quit my job because I was so unhappy with it. So I told him, we need to figure this out. Either we need to live with each other for a time and see if that works, or we need to just break up, because I can't see this going anywhere without us living together. So since he was still in school and I'd just quit my job, it made sense for me to go to him. Basically the way it works, if you go on vacation from the United States or to Canada, you can stay for 6 months vacation. So that was my idea. Go see if we can stand living with each other for a few months, and if it doesn't work out, I can go home early, and if it does work out, then we figure it out from there. So once I got there, I should mention his family is absolutely wonderful. I can't express how happy I am. I basically gained a second family, and they've been treating me like another daughter for their family, and that was something really surprising to me. I was very scared to come stay with him for a longer period of time. I was like, what if they drive me crazy? What if they hate me? What if they treat me badly? I'll have to go stay in a hotel? What do I have to do? But that was not a problem, and not only did I love living here with them, but I also, like, less than a month later, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. It was just that easy. I thought it was going to take so much longer to like decide, but it was like, nope, this is good stuff. Let's make it work. So we went and sat down. I can only hope he felt the same way. He sure did. He said he did. So we went on Google and basically Googled, how do you get married if you're from different countries? And so it turns out there was 2 options. The first one is for me to go home and to apply for a fiancé visa. Basically, it gives you enough time to go down, meet the person for 3 months, see if you still like each other, and get married, and then you can go from there. The other option was to get married right then and there, shotgun wedding. Sadly, the 90-day fiancé thing, there would be a long wait, up to 6 months, and I really felt like if we were going to split up for that long and go back to our separate homes, it wouldn't work. We'd be over. So I said, hey, you want to go get married? And although it's a little more complicated than that, that's basically what we went and did. We got married in a courthouse. It was very small, very wonderful, and there was lots of tears. And now we're married. It's still very complicated because we have to go through all the immigration stuff, but I'm really glad that we made the decision we did, because like I said, if I had to go home, I don't know if we would have survived that separation. And not to mention, especially with the way immigration is right now, there's a good chance we would have been waiting a lot longer. Like, our current stuff is delayed by up to 2 years. So that's my personal Star Wars The Old Republic story. You know, it just ends in marriage, a pretty normal story. But wow, I have made so many friends through this game. For example, we had another friend that we were actually fighting with for a short time, which is pretty funny. But it turns out she actually lives near to us too in California as well. So we actually hang out with her on a regular basis. I've also been able to go to multiple events where I've met a lot of the content creators, which has been really cool to hang out with them as well. People who make stuff about Star Wars The Old Republic, like podcasts and videos and blogs and stuff like that. So the way that Star Wars The Old Republic and just online gaming in general has affected my social and personal life is really intense. So no matter where the game goes, no matter how bad it gets, I'm always going to have a lot of love and nostalgia in my heart about it, and I love it dearly, and I'm very grateful that this was a way for me to get together with so many different people online. So now that I've told you my super sappy story about my life and Star Wars The Old Republic, I'd love to tell you more about how I got into the content creation aspect of it, like creating videos and websites and guides and stuff like that. So as I mentioned, way back when I was younger, I'd just started learning basic web design and how to create articles and stuff like that through Neopets, a site mostly for children, but it was definitely my entry point into making things for the web. And from that, actually, once I'd gotten older, I already realized I liked it quite a bit. I ended up going to trade school for web design. It was super awesome. I learned so much stuff, and it definitely gave me, it was only like a 2-year thing, so it wasn't super long, and it was perfect for me. I'd actually gone to a university for about a year, but it was a huge university. I was kind of taking a random mishmash of classes, and none of them really clicked well with me. I felt so alone a lot of the time, especially because some of the classes were 300 or more people in them. But once I went to that trade school with smaller classes and really focused on web design, there was no, like, you didn't have to go to English class or geography class and stuff like that. And I really liked it, and it clicked super, super well with me, and I knew that was something that I wanted to do for a long time. Funny part is my family and friends had actually been telling me to go into web design, but I'd heard somewhere that you shouldn't do your hobby as a job or you wouldn't love it. Turns out I still love it, and I still do it as my hobby, and I still do it as my job. So I'm really glad I accepted some pushing from my parents to go into that program. Thanks, Mom. So I think I started by just making guides, probably for my guild, about topics that were very guild related. Like a lot of the YouTube videos, especially on beginner's guides that I've made here, actually were probably based on smaller guides that I created for my guild, like how to get into Conquest. That complete one was totally from my guild, and how to craft, 100% just stolen from a guide I'd written from my guild. And I started doing actual website stuff for a kind of a stupid reason. So at some point, Tour Fashion, really fantastic site run by Exiled Messenger, pretty much my favorite fan site for Star Wars The Old Republic. It had gone down for like a couple days or something like that, and it had somehow cached on my browser, so every time I visited it for like a month later, it seemed like it was still down, and I was like, well, if it's still down by now, it's never going to go back up. Really funny, Exile said, no, it was never down for that long. But I felt, why not? I finally got these fantastic skills that I learned through my trade school. I feel like I could do a lot more than I could before I started that. So let's make a fashion site. So it's not up anymore. I'm actually, strangely enough, creating a brand new version right now in the last year or so, but it's not up yet. I'll put a link. You can see it, but it's not done. And so I created that site, and that was really, really fun. I found I like creating large database-based websites. So I'd already gotten a little bit famous from that. Like, a couple people would know my name. They know the Swtorista website, which I thought was kind of cool, but I wasn't really into social media. I just mostly just played with my guild, and that was it. Somewhere along the way, I started listening to Old Republic podcasts, and I realized, oh wow, I really like listening to podcasts, especially the way I work. I usually work with some type of music or something in the background, so I would just be listening to Old Republic podcasts constantly, like weekly. I was listening to every single one that came out by every single podcast for quite a while, and there was one that I really liked called Utinicast. And on one segment of their podcast, basically a radio show, they had a user write in, and the writer said, hey, Utinicast, you guys have been playing for a really long time. You're veterans of the game, and you mostly talk about new upcoming stuff or veteran stuff. Do you think you'll ever cover stuff for newer players? And I was like, oh, you know what? I could do that. So all of these wonderful videos that you see on this channel were actually originally 100% audio based. They are basically a segment that I would record on my own and then send over to their show. From there, it's just grown fantastically, and especially for those of you who've been commenting for a long time, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Obviously, when I put up a video, I can see the numbers rise, I can see the subscribers rise, but what really keeps me going is knowing that there's real live people who are enjoying what I make. Either it makes them laugh, or it makes them have more fun, or helps them understand and better play with other people like their friends. That makes me really, really happy. Oh yeah, I guess I should talk about why it turned from an audio show to actual videos. Once I got married to my husband, because I was technically originally just vacationing in the United States, you can't work while you're on vacation, obviously, I wasn't allowed to work for about 6 months until they reviewed and accepted or denied my application. So I was just kind of stuck. I wasn't allowed to make money. I couldn't even go work at a coffee shop or anything like that. And I decided, well, since I've got all this time, I should probably use it to learn a new skill. So I decided to take that audio that I made before and see if I could learn video editing. Turns out, yes, I can. I know many of you are curious about what types of programs and software that I use to create these videos. So let me give you a quick tour of how everything is made. So I always start with some type of written guide. For the guides that are like, how do you do this? How do you do that? These are actually fully scripted. I write the full thing and then I just read it out nicely to you guys. For things like the armor fashion videos, it's usually just a few bullet points and screenshots, and then I just go from there for the recording. To actually record, I actually use just the basic Windows voice recorder. I don't actually record everything in a long giant string. So right now I'm actually doing it like a sentence at a time. So each video will have like 50 to 60 different audio clips that I actually string together. That way if I say something dumb, haha, see, I just stopped the clip right here. This is a whole new one. So if I do something dumb, it's very easy to chop it out without having to repeat an entire like paragraph's worth of information. Once I'm all done recording the audio, and this usually takes quite a bit of time alone, I port it over into Audacity and I string all the little clips together and mash them together and cut out the space in between. This also is where I clean the background of the audio. The audio before I clean it sounds really, really bad because you can hear the fan, you can hear the computer's fan, you can hear the computer running. It's got a lot of static noise behind it. At this point, I bring that new audio into Sony Vegas Movie Studio. This is one I've been using for about a year and I like it quite a bit so far. It's not free, but I would say it's worth getting if you're interested in movie editing at all. And then I usually jump in-game to record a video that fits or look through my video archive to see if I have any footage that already works. I usually just try to match up something that I can show in-game to match whatever I'm saying in the audio. And lastly, I go into Photoshop and create some good-looking titles for whatever it is I want to show off on the video. And a thumbnail. Thumbnails are very important. I just like photoshopping pretty things, so they're a tiny hobby of mine as well. So I've told you my personal story about Star Wars: The Old Republic, and I've told you my video creating side of Star Wars: The Old Republic. Can I tell you now about why I actually like the game itself and why I'm still playing it versus moving on to another online game? So first off, I love the setting of the Old Republic era in the Star Wars universe. I really like the Star Wars universe because it has so many incredible settings. It's also a world where magic exists in the form of Jedi and Sith, but it's not a huge intrinsic part of the world. For example, there's tons and tons of heroes, villains, and characters who do not have access to the Force. So as I mentioned way back at the beginning of this video, I enjoyed playing Dark Forces and the other early Star Wars games, and in those games a lot of the times you wouldn't be using a lightsaber. You'd often just start off with a blaster rifle or even a Wookiee bowcaster. So the idea of being a tech user in a world where there's Jedi and Sith hunting you down, that's something that's really stuck with me along the way. So I really like that in Star Wars: The Old Republic, you don't have to play a Jedi or a Sith if you don't want to. I also like the Old Republic era a lot because of the sheer amount of Jedi and Sith that exists during this era. For example, consider the very first Star Wars movie. You can count the number of Force users on one hand, and as far as we know, that's like in the movie when it first came out, that's all that existed. Maybe there never was anymore and there never will be anymore. But in the Old Republic era, you've got Padawans and apprentices coming out the wazoo. There is so many people on Tython, and it makes perfect sense in the actual storyline. I also really like that there's a chance to play characters that are not main characters from the movies. Obviously, there's tons of characters, like I love Captain Phasma, I love Boba Fett, but I guess I'm just saying I don't want to play as Darth Vader, I don't want to play as Luke, I kind of just want to play my own personal character that I've created and been able to put some imagination into. Being able to play Star Wars: The Old Republic also gives me a lot of nostalgia of the settings from those older video games. Being able to go to Nar Shaddaa, Coruscant with upgraded graphics is an absolute, that's a pleasure for me, to be honestly, just to be able to go and like stand and watch all the undercity traffic go by is really, really cool. I know that combat is often considered a bit of a weak point for this game, but I personally really enjoy it, especially once I got into running operations with other people, especially the harder content. I feel like it really keeps me on my toes, and I don't feel it's too easy. No, we were just running hard mode Dread Fortress, and I think I died like at least 10 times throughout the whole entire operation. I also really like that the game has such in-depth movie cinematic style cutscenes. It's really cool to see your own character that you've created the look of, you've added some backstory to, you've chosen their armor, and then you get them in their own movie, basically. You get to see them on the big screen playing out their story. That's really cool, and not something I'd really had a chance to experience until I started playing Star Wars: The Old Republic. I also really like the class storylines. I think it's still insane. This is still crazy to this day and age, especially way back when it first came out, that you can have 8 completely different class stories, all of them fully voiced and all of them completely different. That's so cool, and no other game has really done it since either, and I don't know if it will ever happen again. And that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really genuinely, sincerely, really like making content for you guys, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to do that. If you have any questions about my little story, or if you have any questions about Star Wars The Old Republic, feel free to ask in the comments below. And as always, may the Force be with you.